Now, our Club GA coverage here on Off the Ball is with thanks to AIB. They are the proud sponsors of the All-Ireland Club Football, Hurling and Camogie Championships. Check out the hashtag The Toughest, especially this weekend, because we've got the All-Ireland Club Senior Football and Hurling Championship Finals at Croke Park on Sunday afternoon. The first game of two will be last year's beaten finalists, Ballyhale Shamrocks of Kilkenny, 8-time All-Ireland champions, up against Dunloy of Antrim. That's at 1:30. And that's followed by the team who lost the football final last year, Kilmacud Crokes, who go up against the team who've knocked out the reigning champions Kilcoo. It is Glen of Derry in the football final at 3:30. A great day's entertainment to look forward to at Croke Park. Delighted to say former All-Ireland winning goalkeeper with Galway and co-host of the Hurling Pod ahead of season 2 of the pod, James Skehill, is here with me. Skehill, how are you getting on?
Very well. How are you, Will?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to this hurling final, even though it's very heavily weighted on expectation of Ballyhale Shamrocks to win. That probably shouldn't be any great surprise, though. I mean, if it wasn't for COVID, which took a championship out, and then the Harry Ruddle goal for Ballygunner last year at Croke Park, it's only really 10 months ago now at this stage, we could be talking about Ballyhale going for 5 in a row.
Potentially, yeah. I was just looking up a few statistics there during the week, and obviously it's their 4th final in 5 days, and you know the quality of opposition they've come up against in those finals has been top drawer. And to see how they took down Ballygunner, because if I go back to the Ballygunner and Piercy game in the Munster Championship, like I was so impressed with Ballygunner, like I actually struggled to see how to be beaten, especially when you get to Croke Park with more space and the kind of legs they have in the forwards, and then for Ballyhale to do what they did to a team of the calibre of Ballygunner was amazing on their behalf.
I'll openly admit, after that performance, particularly from Ballygunner, and they had a long layoff before they played in Munster, and then swept all before them in the Provincial Championship, there was a little bit of shakiness at times about Ballyhale Shamrocks, particularly the second half against Kilmacud Crokes in Leinster. And you started to wonder, OK, maybe they're a bit susceptible to teams running against them. Ballygunner are very good at that type of game. And I think it's fair. A lot of people probably saw Ballygunner as favourites going into the semi-final before Christmas.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you. And truth be told, I placed them as favourites also. I thought they were going to go for 2 in a row. I was looking at Ballygunner thinking, you know, even looking towards the future, saying that they'll come through Waterford quite easily as they've shown in the past, and they could go 2, 3, 4, who knows what they're capable of, because they seem to have a good mix of experience, obviously, and mix that with some fast forwards like they have. I was amazed, because when you look at Croke Park, you see one thing you need in Croke Park for sure is legs, and a lot of legs, because there's an awful lot of space and you can get opened up very quick. And I thought maybe Ballyhale, and everyone will say that they're aged a bit. That's why the performances they produce, and it's a typical Kenny performance whereby they're always hanging in there, always and forever hanging in. You can never get rid of them per se, and if the longer they hang in, a Kilkenny team, any Kilkenny team you play against, the longer they hang in, the more of a chance they have to turn you over. And that's why you look at even what they conceded. It was a 16 points against Ballygunner, off memory I think. 16 points or so against a team of that calibre, like is fantastic. And I'm looking towards the final now at the weekend, and I'm saying to myself, like, Ballygunner or Ballyhale, are going to put up a big score. Like, I was just again looking through the statistics, and you could say over their championship games in Kilkenny, Leinster Championship and Ireland, they've scored an average of 27 points. So for Dunloy to come to Croke Park and stop Ballyhale getting anywhere near that, let alone exceed it, is going to be a huge task for them. Yeah,
because I'm not sure where Adrian Mullen is going to hurl at the weekend, Skehill, because he came out in a bit more withdrawn role, but maybe against Ballygunner that was just give extra numbers against the team they were playing against. Maybe they want to get him as close to the other goal as possible this time. When you think, you know, Colin Fennelly, who's probably flourished in his post-Kilkenny days by being able to concentrate on Ballyhale Shamrocks, TJ Reid, one of the best players of his generation, if not the best player of his generation, and then you mix in 2 of the last young hurlers of the year in Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen. It's firepower that's almost unheard of that they have within that squad.
Like, it's an embarrassment of riches. I know when you talk about this at county level, you're always looking at Limerick, how they have they just have a numerical advantage over top quality players, and it's the same at the club level for Ballyhale. They have it covered in all areas. And I think with the Adrian Mullen, like you were saying, I think that was kind of a system whereby they had to have a certain type of game plan to I suppose nullify Ballygunner and then get ahead of them. Whereas in the Dunloy game, I can see more of a 15 on 15, if you like, with Adrian Mullen slightly drawn out, but still the same old system. You know, pumping high ball down top of TJ, he's going to win it. Mullen and Cody coming off him, and then long ball into Colin Fennelly, who was amazing one-on-one and creates so many chances. Even an off chance he can create for others, and I think they're going to have great fruition at the weekend. Like, if you go back, history has a funny habit of repeating itself, and I was just looking back through Dunloy's previous appearances. So they played in 95 against Burr after a replay, as you well know, and they scored 9 points cumulatively in both days. Then they played Newtown-Shandrum in 2004. They got 9 points. And I'm looking again for the weekend, and I'm saying to myself, and with the great respect now, I'd really love to be in their shoes the weekend. How they're going to get over Ballyhale, and will they score 11, 12, 13 points? I just don't know. And I know the handicap is, if you look at the bookies, they're saying it's a -7, -8, but this is it's heavily weighted towards Ballyhale. And when you look at the numbers that they have in the forwards, the calibre, the firepower, the pace, they can do it all individually as well as a collective. It's very, very hard to see how Dunloy can come close to them, to be honest.
Yeah, like when we look at Dunloy, this is a great year they've had. They were able to get past Slaughtneil, who've been their provincial rivals in recent years. And we know that Slaughtneil have made it sticky for Ballyhale Shamrocks when they've met in All-Ireland semi-finals in recent years, but Ballyhale were able to come out on top. For Dunloy, that win against St Thomas's, I think they totally deserved it, and they played some magnificent hurling with the type of distribution they got into that forward line. A great goal to win the game during the match as well, and I thought they came home very comfortable after the goal went in. But there must be a feeling around Galway that St Thomas's didn't really turn up for that semi-final.
It's true, yeah. Again, St Thomas has knocked us out of the championship this year. And with that in mind, I thought going up to Croke Park that they were probably set, for a run towards the final. I suppose it's viewed here in Galway, again, with respect, if you get the northern side of the draw, you've got a great chance to get to a final. But that's not always the case. You see what Dunloy have done to Athenry, Portumna, what they've now done to St Thomas, Lochgiel, what they did to St Thomas is bring them to a replay in the past. So it's not as simple as one might think. However, Thomas's, I think when they look back at it, they will say they underperformed. And underperformed a lot. Now, granted, they were missing 2 key players when you consider Dara Burke and James Regan, and those 2 guys to any team, especially to Thomas's and to their system, was an awful loss. So you take those 2 guys out of that team, and obviously their productivity dropped a lot. But still, when saying that, you would imagine that they would have thought going into the game they'd have enough to overtake them. And in fairness, watching the game live, Dunloy never seemed in trouble. I know his half time was 6-6 or something like that, but they always seem to have a gear ahead of St Thomas's, and St Thomas just couldn't find a different game plan, a way around Dunloy, and they had all the answers on the day, Dunloy. So credit to them there, but they're facing a wholly different proposition against Ballyhale at the weekend. And if you rewind, going back to the semi-final, if you remember, St Thomas was playing Ballyhale last year, was it?
Yeah,
I think it was last year.
The one in Thurles, that's things. I can't reconcile those 2 performances, because it took that moment of TJ Reid magic to get Ballyhale over the line, and it really felt like St Thomas's had come to a position where they were one of the absolute best in the country last year. And then I saw the frustration that was on their faces, and the frustration probably among their supporters as well, with the performance that they put in just before Christmas. Yeah,
because even there was a level of ferociousness when they played Ballyhale last year. And that was met with, again, great execution of the forwards. And I just remember Conor Cooney throwing himself around against Ballyhale, mowing lads down, and that shows a real intent, aggressive intent. And that performance against Ballyhale was a far cry for what they produced against Dunloy. And even the county final against Loughrea, what they produced the second day was brilliant, awesome hurling, you could say. And which was, you were kind of saying, Thomas, this is 5 in a row. Are they ever going to wane? Are they ever going to go down the way? But it seemed like in Galway they were ascending this year. They're actually getting better with age, with experience, whatever you can say. And then what they produced in the semi-final was extremely disappointing. And me as a Galway man, I was hoping for our sake collectively that they'd make a run towards the final and see what they can produce against the top 2, if you like. But it didn't happen. So I'd say everyone's disappointed. No more so than Thomas's group. But, and now they're a wounded animal again coming into the Galway Championship, which is not what I want.
No, only going for the 6 in a row next year in Galway as well. Dunloy themselves, I mean, look, what a story they are. I thought Keelan Malloy's goal in the semi-final, one of the best goals of the year, is going to be right up there when we maybe reflect on the season and go for goal of the year. I thought there was a directness about the running, and I thought it was almost like the type of running they tried to do throughout the second half caused so much damage to St Thomas's. And I thought they were very clever with the distribution. I'm a big fan of Conal Cunningham, have been for a few years. They passed the ball around really cleverly within that forward line. When they got possession, especially in that second half, I thought they used it very effectively.
Yeah, and did you notice that they played a lot like the Antrim County team at the moment in terms of possession, retention, using the ball? It wasn't just what you see sometimes, a hit and hope kind of one-on-one situation, but they utilised the ball, they kept possession. Even if you look at the game as a whole, I would say the possession stats, if they were available, would be 60-40 in favour of Dunloy. Smart very efficient with the ball, and then when they see an opening, they go for it. So, like big players for Antrim are playing for Dunloy. You see, when you see the stage, Cunningham, Malloy, Elliott's, so they need to produce to a level that they probably have never done before. Granted, they're I think 4 or 5 in a row in Antrim at the moment, so they've come through their county championship with relative ease, but they're going to have to produce a system and a game plan. And now it's one thing producing it, or even I suppose thinking it up, but to produce it against a team of the calibre of Ballyhale, who I must remind you, have come through the Kilkenny Championship that, as we all know, and I think it's nationally known at the minute, is a dog-eat-dog championship, come through a very, very tough Leinster Championship, and have come through an extremely tough semi-final. So these are a battle-hardened, hungry club team. So if you're trying to get over them, yes, you have to have your game plan correct, but you have to execute it to a level that probably Dunloy have never done before. And that's the big task. Can you execute the game plan that they've set out to do to 110% and see can they take down Ballyhale? That's the big question. And I don't think they can, to be honest.
It's the last thing every other club in the country needed, was Ballyhale also having the drive of last year, having lost in such dramatic circumstances. Last book of the ball gave them every reason to be hungry going into the 2022-23 season. I was very impressed by Joey Holden. I know what you made of his performance against Ballygunner. I thought he was very assured. Everyone was talking before the game about, the great runners that Ballygunner had within their team and the potential danger they could do. I thought Joey Holden put in a wonderfully composed performance. It wasn't about maybe, say, last gasp blocks or anything like that, but he was so good at being in the right place at the right time all game.
You're so right. And look, I don't even know who got man of the match, Will. And with respect, if you were to pick out TJ Collin, Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, in that forward unit where he has inter-county support around him with the forwards, it's easy to pick out a man of the match and look well. With respect, with Joey Holden at the back, what he was up against, he was my man of the match in the semi-final. I thought he was awesome. He did two things. He was able to mark space and mark the man, which is extremely difficult. So he was obviously ahead of the game in terms of his reading ability, and he had to do that. He had to take a numerous amount of chances in getting out in front and trying to cut out balls into the Desi Hutchinsons and the Fitzgeralds' world. So he has probably gotten better at the club stage, if you like, since he left the Kilkenny panel. And interesting to read his article, obviously, even for a man, for all he's won, all he's done in the game, he still has regrets with regard to the Ballygunner game last year, which shows a hunger and desire that they have down there that I don't think is ever matched. When you consider what they've done, I think they're probably the winningest club team in the country, probably 8, I'd imagine.
If they have 9 All-Irelands at the end of this weekend, it's going to be a job for anyone to ever catch them.
Ever catch them, I think the furthest at the moment is probably the Burrs and the Portumnas, and that's, again, these teams come in generations. Portumna came in a generation, Burr was a generation, so was Athenry, but Ballyhale has stood the test of time. I don't know how to do it. When you pass through their village, it's no bigger than the back lawn abroad, you could say, but it's just that they still produce these hurlers. They have a great system. They seem to have a great camaraderie. They're very close, even in game and out of game. So it's again, when you assess all of them and what they've done in the past, it all weighs itself towards themselves taking home number 9 at the weekend. Yeah,
well, we're chatting to Maurice Brosnan from the Irish Examiner a little bit earlier in the week, Skehill, and he was making almost that very point, which is teams often have a shelf life as a club where they have a golden generation, and sometimes they will make the most of it, and Portumna and Burr definitely did that. And we're looking at some of the football teams, and there are plenty of teams who won All-Irelands 20 years ago and have won very few senior titles even since. In the case of Ballyhale Shamrocks, and in a very competitive Kilkenny Championship, they lose players in recent years to retirement, like Michael Fennelly, a former hurler of the year, one of the very best of all time in Henry Shefflin, and yet they unearthed an Owen Cody and an Adrian Mullen to be their successors.
Yeah, every club team, I suppose, every year you're trying to introduce some youth players into your team to try to keep the revolving door open. Obviously, people leave, people come in. There's immigration, there's family life, etc. So in a club team, there's always noticeable changes. But when you take Ballyhale, they have gone through an awful lot of changes. As you said, Michael Fennelly, Chad Fitzpatrick, everyone seems to forget about him. And still to be able to produce not only youth. Now this is one thing. Youth is one thing. But to produce the calibre of youth that they've done, who are now, Mullen and Cody, as has been proven, 2 of the best young players in the country. That's an irregularity. You don't see that in club teams on a regular level. So if you have a team, let's say, who's beside Black Rays beside me, they introduced a couple of youth players this year, good players who've done a good lot of work for the club, but to produce on an inter-county level what the 2 lads below Ballyhale done, sure, it's unheard of. And again, there's no recipe, there's no formula. It just seems to be that they're integrating into the system, if you like, the club system, whether that's getting at them young, getting into schools, whether it's the Kieran Pollard, it's hard to know, but it's amazing. And as I said earlier at the start of this, it's an embarrassment of riches. And again, if they win this one, they're going to be right back there next year. The hardest thing for them, I suppose, on a temporary basis, is to get out of Kilkenny. And to see what the scores they've racked up in Kilkenny, as I said, an average of 27, 28 points, that's awesome scoring by any championship. If you go to a club, if you can score 22, 23 points, you've 99 times 100 you're going to win the game. But for them to average 27 against the opposition they faced is tremendous.
Yeah, mass respect to Dunloy as well. As you mentioned, they've been to the dance 4 times in back-to-back years and 2 occasions, lost to Burr in 2 of the finals, the draw the first day. My abiding memory, Skehill, was actually being in Croke Park at the time it was being reconstructed. So the wind was blowing through the stadium and there was snow on St Patrick's Day that year. And Bird just about got out and won the replay in 1995. And I always felt for Dunloy, they lost the year after. And then similarly, they lost to Birr in 03. Then lost the final the year after that as well. So tough going for them with the finals they've been to. And just a word for Gregory O'Callghan, who just Mr. Dunloy. Basically, 1990, they win their first Antrim title. He's playing. He's been involved in every single championship they've won at club, provincial, and now into the All-Ireland series in some capacity. He's either been a player, a selector, a coach, or in this case, the manager. So what a run of success that he's been involved every year since 1990. I want to ask you as well, because I know you have no more topic you enjoy talking to me about than the winter of 2015 into 2016, because Joe Canning's been talking about it again. Anthony Cunningham and Micheál O'Donoghue coming in to replace him. Micheál was in charge last week of his Dublin team taking on Galway in the Welsh Cup, so he's moved on, but he was your manager in 2017 when you won the All-Ireland. So at the moment, Joe Canning's been promoting Lerca Gale, which is out very soon. We'll be speaking to Joe on the show as well. He said, quote, with Anthony, referring to Anthony Cunningham, everyone knows the players had a vote and the players were represented to go and talk to him as well. I was part of that. I felt, and 3 or 4 of the other guys felt, that we should have been looking at ourselves and not the management. I backed Anthony to stay because he had done so much for us. It wasn't the right thing to do, and it just got messy after that. That, to me, sounds like Joe Canning very clearly was one in the camp that felt Anthony Cunningham should stay. What's your thoughts on what he said?
Yeah, I think first of all, his comments are fair. Like it's the person's opinion, and you have to understand this. The group, albeit it's an amateur sports team, still is a democracy. So there's no dictator, there's no overriding ruler. The captain, just like anybody else, has one vote, the same as the last substitute. So I think everyone assessed the situation and assessed, I suppose, the period in which Anthony was over us and all that had happened in the 4 seasons. What had gone on in particular in that season, to the quality of what was produced, probably on a training perspective. And I think everyone universally did their own assessment. I did my own assessment. The Fergal Moores, Tony Oakes, they all did their own assessments, as did Joe and others, and just came to a decision that on their own opinions that maybe he thought, and which is his way now. I'll pause for a second. That's his way though in general, whereby he'd always be first to look at himself or look at us as a player. He would never really want in my opinion, he'd never really want to pass blame to a selector, maybe, or to a game plan, or anything like that. So it's look internally first, and then if internally is right, you can look externally. But whereas for me, I was looking across the board, looking at ourselves. Yes, absolutely, taking that on one hand, but then looking at what if we got a different setup and we got a different, I suppose, viewpoint, freshness with a different type of game plan, and then I looked at probably the assets that the players have. When I put them together, I said, okay, it's time for a change. And see, hindsight is simple right now. Where I sit right now, it's obviously won a couple of Leinsters, a couple of leagues, etc. Won that Ireland, which is great. And that I have the benefit of hindsight. But at the time, that was a very, very difficult decision. That wasn't just us clicking our fingers saying, right, everyone gone and get a new management team. We didn't know Micheál was going to be the manager. Had no idea. We hadn't got anyone lined up. There was no one touted, no one approached. It was just a stage by stage thing where you have to assess your own situation. So can this group?
The referendum then was, James, it's either Anthony stays or we look another way. It wasn't, say, one management team versus the other. No,
there wasn't, because if you remember, we went to, where did we go that winter? We went to Boston, if you remember, for the 11-a-side in Fenway Park. We went to no management team. We didn't go anyone. We went ourselves as a group of players. So it was unheard of. So at the time, it was exactly that. It was a decision of A, do we keep Anthony and the management team in place, or B, do we look for another route? And I suppose the way the vote went, it was overridingly go a different route.
Did the 4 or 5 lads that Joe mentions there that were on, say, team continuity, I'm going to call it, keep Anthony Cunningham around his management team for the next year, did they easily then roll back in once Micheál came in?
I'm trying to think who the 4 or 5 were. You would think I'd know, wouldn't you, pretty easily?
I'd imagine there was heated debates about it, surely.
Absolutely. Oh, there 100% was, because you're talking about, again, I know we're amateurs, but you're still talking about high-performing athletes who are putting a load of time into this. And so if you're doing that, you want to have everything right. So, and again, you're talking about, in truthfully speaking, alpha males. You have them you're the alpha male in your club, you come into a setup where, You bring all those alpha males together and there's going to be heated debate, heated opinion, which is fine. That's no problem. That's all part of a healthy relationship with a healthy group. But they wrote in, everyone wrote in. Once the decision was made, granted there was a bit of back and forth and it did get a bit messy in the media, which truthfully speaking we didn't expect. I didn't expect it personally. I didn't think it would go that far or go kind of that public, if you like, where we'd introduce a mediator. And ultimately we just, when it was all said and done and Anthony stepped aside, I think it was just a line in the sand. Everybody move on. There was no ill feeling or there was no bad blood between anybody, because that would, if there was, it would have destroyed the group, and as signs showed in the past, it didn't.
Well, look, ultimately you get your Celtic Cross in 2017, so it's proven correct that Micheál was the right manager to get you to that point and to bridge the gap. Were you very aware that there was probably a feeling around the country at the time that there were many people who thought, you know what, these Galway boys have got a bit too big for their boots, they've decided that they're better than the management that they've just gotten rid of? Okay,
I was very cognizant of that, Will, because if you go back to, if you remember the time of the Cork strike, they got, now again, go back, that's a different time again, you know, they got lambasted. And the traditionalists in hurling, whether in GAs as a whole, they'll always say managers manage and players play. That's it. And that's what a lot of people that was probably coming at us and giving us a bit of stick, you know, would be a lot of the traditionalists, whereby they wouldn't like players speaking up towards a management group, about a management group, and ultimately, you know, removing a management group, they probably have the opinion play and play only. And we understand that, and it did put a bit of pressure on us. But the thing is, once Micheál came on board and the management, they kicked off, the pressure was kind of alleviated, because you were just focused on your goal. The goal is the same every year: win the league, win the Leinster, win the Ireland. So it wasn't as if it was carried throughout the year. We have to win the Ireland because of what went on 7-8 months ago. That just got completely, you know, blew into the air. So yes, for a couple of months it was heated. It was all over the media. There was an awful lot of calls, text messages, journalists approaching you looking for comments, kind of attention you didn't want. And then once January came along and February, and you're into the roll of games, on it went. Now, in fairness, if you remember that year, I think off memory, we got relegated from the league by Cork on the last day. So again, that put a bit of pressure onto us for the 2016 season. But I think it just galvanised it. It made us a bit steely, a bit harder, you know, to understand that, block out the outside noise and just look after yourselves.
Well, look, we'll be talking to Joe on the show. I think next week is the plan we have in mind at the moment. I'm looking forward, we can pick up this conversation with Paul on season 2 of the Hurling Pod in a few weeks' time as well. So I'm already looking forward to that. James, thanks a million.
No bother, Will. Thanks, Bud.
And we've got the club finals at Croke Park this coming weekend. We'll have coverage here on Off the Ball across Sunday, and our club GAA coverage on AIB is brought to you, our club coverage here on Off the Ball is brought to you by AIB. They are the proud sponsors of the All-Ireland Club Football Hurling and Camogie Championships. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest.